Used to be. Kita lihat resource. Steam close. Not that bad. And you used to be. So
In this video, we're going to talk about the mouse area. This is extremely cool and allows for some really interesting user interactions. It's much more complex than the tap handler, and you can take a simple object such as a rectangle and make it In this video, we're going to talk about the mouse area. This is extremely cool and allows for some really interesting user interactions. Very interactable. Let's take a look at this. All right, so let's kill that. First off, mouse area versus tap handler. Why do we need two of these? We've already kind of covered the tap handler. Well, if you read the documentation, tap handler really just handles taps on a touch screen or clicks on a mouse. It's really just simple gesture detection. It's not meant to be a heavyweight here. Meaning, did they touch the screen? If so, what did they do? Where the mouse area is much more advanced. You can do drag and drop and all sorts of really cool stuff, and it has a lot of signals to play with. For example, on clicked, double clicked, entered, exited, position changed, and so on and so on. So let's dive in here. Now, before we do, the mouse area, like the tap handler, is an invisible item. So we have to have some sort of parent to interact with. And there's a lot of little gotchas about the mouse area that'll be initially frustrating until you really wrap your head around it. So we're just going to make a rectangle, and let's call this ID.
For example, on click,
area,
double click,
set the color,
so
blue,
we have to have some sort of parent
like
to interact with. And there's a lot of little gotchas about the mouse area.
Why not? Let's make it 200, height 200, and let's go ahead and drop an anchor, center in the parent. Nothing super special about this. It's just going to be a blue rectangle. Now let's get the user interaction. Let's go ahead and add in a mouse area. Notice I'm adding this in as a child of the rectangle. let's say my mouse. Why am I adding this in as a child of the rectangle? Simple. If I decide I don't want this rectangle and I just delete it, I'm also deleting the mouse area that's going to interact with it. I could very easily have this mouse area exist outside of the rectangle, but then I just have this orphaned object sitting out here doing nothing. For example, if I did something like this and then deleted that rectangle, why does this mouse area even exist anymore? So when in doubt, I typically like to embed them as children so it's nice and contained. All right, enough lecture. Got our mouse area here. Let's play with some signals. So I want to say onClicked. Console log, I want to know that these are clicked. And if we look at, jump back to the documentation here, clicked, you notice there is a mouse property here, or I should say a parameter. The mouse parameter provides information about the click, including the XY position, the button, and so on. Interesting. So that really talks about, hey, you can now get details of what happened here. That's extremely cool. Let's look at that, and we're going to say mouse.button. And then I want some basic interaction. So I'm going to say if mouse.button triple equals, if you do double, like what you're used to in C++ land, QML is going to get a little mad at you. Oops, don't want left arrow, I want left button. There we go. So if we're going to left click, we're going to say parent.color equals, and let's say green. And through the magic of copy and paste, we can grab this guy. Grab the right button. And let's make this red. This is one of the little gotchas that's just going to infuriate you when you start working with the mouse area. Actually, we'll do two of them at once. First one is, if we run this, nothing happens. Why? Because that mouse area, we haven't defined a width or height or an anchor, so it is right here, and it is 0 by 0. So you can't even click it. Very frustrating. So let's go ahead and drop an anchor in here. Solved one problem. Now we can left click, but when we right click, nothing happens. Let's look at our app output. You see clicked 1, so only button 1 is being registered, and I'm clicking very loud, hoping the microphone can hear that. Right click is not working. No worky. What's up with that? It said it can do the buttons. It's going to track them. What's going on here is we have to tell the mouse area what it's going to accept. Frustrating. All right, so we're going to say accept buttons. Here we go. And then we're just going to, through the magic of copy and paste, say it'll accept left or it will accept right. That's actually by design because, well, user interaction, specifically the mouse, can get very chatty, and you want to be able to filter some things out here. Some gaming mice, the one I have on my desk has 6 buttons on it. That gets crazy. Alright, so now we can left click and we can right click. Sweet. So let's play around with double clicking, entering, exiting, and monitoring a position change. So on double click, and let's do it this way. And we also want that mouse. Pull up our app output and left click, double click with the right button. So you can see it is working, and it's actually extremely cool. Now we want to do interactions as far as entering and exiting, and we want to monitor the position of the mouse. So let's, way too big on that. Let's get rid of that. And we want to monitor the position change. And we're going to say all right, here is the final little gotcha here. Position change, we run this, open the app output, and let's mouse over, and nothing happens. Did we break it? Nope, we can still click and double click, but it's not actually giving us feedback. A little gotcha here. Position change, we run this, open the app output. So let's, oops, way too big on that. Let's get rid of that. And we want to monitor the position change. And we're going to say alright, here is the final little gotcha here. Position change, we run this, open the app output, and let's mouse over, and nothing happens. Did we break it? Nope, we can still click and double click, but it's not actually giving us feedback. Another frustrating little bit, you actually have to turn hovering on. So we're going to say hover enabled, true, save and run. Let's show our output, and suddenly, boom. This is what I mean by it can get very chatty. I mean, it's just filling up our app output log here. So that is extremely cool. Gives us some really, really sharp precision. Let's go ahead and monitor the entered and exited. And we're going to say parent.color. And on exited, parent.color.
Hey.
I want to set this back to blue.
Hey.
That way it just looks normal.
Hey.
Very cool. We can do all sorts of things, and we get some really, really sharp details, and it just works once you get over the little caveats here. Some of the more frustrating bits to be aware of. Let's just recap here.
Halo para
penonton
penonton setia.
If you want anything more than the left button, hover enabled has to be true if you want to monitor position entered or exited. Double click and click work by default, but again, it's going to backbone on your accepted buttons. And of course, you have to have this fill some type of area. You can either drop an anchor or you can do a width and a height. You have to extend on exit really, really sharp, but it's not actually giving us feedback. Another frustrating little bit, you actually have to turn hovering on. So we're going
Ya, coba yang klik cut. If mouse accepted buttons. YouTube button. Yes. Hah? Unclick. Kenapa ini? Wah, udah bayaran. On click on click.
Going to say, and it just works.
Okay. Wes,
Once you get over the little caveats here. Some of the more frustrating bits to be aware of, and let's just recap here, is you have to accept buttons if you want anything more than the left button. Hover enabled has to be true if you want to monitor position entered or exited. Double click and click work by default, but again, it's going to backbone on your accepted buttons. And of course, you have to have this fill some type of area. You can either drop an anchor or you can do a width and a height. Now that we understand some foundational items like a rectangle and a text and image and mouse area and all that, we can make some basic components. That's right, we're going to actually make our own component. This is something that's extremely advanced.
what the fuck is this? Kok Raisa? Weh, apa bangga? Nah, I'm used to be. I'm not alone. I used to be. Loh, kok iso bangsat? Woo! Oke, mouse button. Kok bisa? Apakah bisa? Loh, what the fuck? Anjir lah, ini ngomong sih. Riz gambar Google Lens tinggal kopas kayak konjut titik ini. Hah? No, kita belajar di sini. And it used to be the one that I love. No. Aku mau apa sih bedanya? Mouse dot button, Q right button. Oh, pakai tenan sana nih. Blue, yellow, green. Oke, kabel. Dot center in parent. Iso sih bangke. What the fuck? What's going on here? I have an idea. Nah, kita coba kasih teks di sini. Teks ID-nya goblok, my text string goblok, nothing important in this life. Terus if mouse scroll button kita kayak ini. Terus my text dot text q string stupid motherfucker. Kita WY root dot id root dot hate men 200 mungkin gini, x sama dengan root dot weight bagi 2. Waduh, Dima anjir, nothing important, stupid motherfucker. Okay, it works at least. Method text anjir, startnya sini dikit kenapa gitu. Aku suka bermain dengan api. Aku punya anak kucing yang lucu sekali. Kita build. Let's see your application. Okay, makes sense. Caranya ganti font biar nih teks. Font info dot family. Ini caranya define font biar. Tinggal ngomong lato nulis. Oh, bisa kah? Kita coba font info dot ini mah font family ada font dot family. Oke, apa lagi? Siapa? Define font cute. Font cute. Keyboard. KML set font. Mengiso padha wae kita. Loh, beda kah? Padha wae anjir. Kayaknya aku tuh define manual deh. Iya gitu. Define manual font. How to do that? How to do that? Define. Okay now. Font loader. Oh. Load local font. Okay now. Kita coba ya. Alt 0 add prefix sih. Tuh caranya ya. Add file. Resource. Prefix anyway. Go to fonts. Lato. Okay. Regular like this. Download. Lato black. Font loader. Anjay, babar. Ada files. Download Lato reguler. Kan gitu terus. Kita coba font loader. Oh, oh. Style bodoh gak sih? Font dot sis font dot pixel sis. Oh, anjay. Segi style bodoh gak sih? Atau mas oh iya bener kan. Bisa woi anjay. Terus coba font yang lain mungkin apa ya, send before grow. Nah, apa kita done save quick selection extract. Oke, terus tambah ke font the file quick send bold bold file salah quick send quick send oke. Bisa anjir. Oke, nice you. Bikinnya tak deploy dengan Android. Emang bisa? Gak tahu ya. Beda kah dengan Android? Anjir, omoi. Wah. Anjay, mabar. Apa anjir? What the fuck? Mau full screen tak? Oi, what the fuck? Not responding anjir. What the fuck? Gak paham lah. Bola bingung. Oke. Anjay. Wah. Sebut. Oke, setelah ya. Tak wae musik lah. Oh ya. NCS NCS Lofi. Oke. Anjay. Oke. Halo Viko. Halo Alfian Eza. Halo Viko. Halo Alfian Eza. Oh, looping anjir. Oke, make sense. Ya, close lagi, kita lihat kursus.
Advanced and complex in other libraries and frameworks and things of that nature. I mean, even in Qt widgets, Qt's other technology branch, the desktop graphic user interface, it can be very daunting to try to make your own custom widget. In QML, however, it's extremely easy. So we're going to make a basic button. We're going to shy away from signals because we're not quite there yet. And we want just the base functionality, just to make something clickable on the screen without having to make multiple rectangles every single time. So let's dive in here and see what this takes. I'm going to right click our resource file. We're going to go to add new, go to Qt, QML file, and the naming convention's a little bit strict here. You can't do like all lower or all upper. You have to do camel case. I have not found that to be true on all platforms. On one box it did take all lower, on another box it just wouldn't. I think it's specific to Qt versioning and the specific build of Qt and all this other weird stuff. To be brutally honest, I don't understand it myself. I just know that if you deviate from the naming convention, you're going to have a bad time. So my button now lives inside of the resource, so it will be compiled. We can test to see if we have the naming convention right by typing my and then hitting space. Or you can start typing away and you'll see IntelliSense popping up.
That's not
Naming
bro.
convention, right? To understand it myself. I just know that if you deviate from the naming convention, you're going to have a bad time. So my button now lives inside of the resource, so it will be compiled. We can test to see if we have the naming convention right by typing my and then hitting space. Or you can start typing away and you'll see IntelliSense popping up. If you don't see IntelliSense pop up, it just isn't there, meaning QML is not going to automatically detect it. Inside our file, we have an item, which remember is a non-visual element. So it doesn't have things like color. If we try to set a color property, you see it just isn't there. We can add a color animation, but there's no color property. So what we're going to have to do is make some properties, add a rectangle, text, and some mouse area. Let's go ahead and start down that path. We're going to say ID root. Typical naming convention, I like to call my root object root, just so I know what it is. We're going to set a width and a height. Typically you won't do this, but I want to do it just so when we add it, it automatically has a width and a height. Now we need to add property. Remember, a property has a type, a name, and a value. So the type, when in doubt, you can just say var, but because I know what type I want, a color in this case, I can actually just add it. Color, and then let's call this light gray. And if you're wondering what that color is, you just mouse over and it'll show us. And through the magic of copy and paste, we can take this and make some other properties as well. So now I want color clicked. And let's call this green. And I want a title. Title's not a color, it's a string. When in doubt, I can use var. In case you're ever wondering what basic types QML really honors, it's pretty limited, to be brutally honest with you. Colors, strings, numbers, 9 times out of 10 you'll just see people say var because they don't want to have to try to figure out whether or not QML really accepts it. It is in the documentation, but most of the time, even in the official Qt examples, they're just going to use var. Qt 6, I've heard that's all going to change and that you have to have strong typing, so be warned on that. Now, remember an item's non-visual, so we need some sort of object, in this case a rectangle, and we'll call this ID myRec, and or we could have called it myAir or whatever. Let's go ahead and drop an anchor. We're going to fill the parent. Our parent, of course, is this invisible item. And now we want to set the color. So I'm going to say color, and this is where we're going to say, we can either say parent color, or we can say root.color. And there's other things you can do. You can do like component.color and things like that. I like specifically naming it. That way it doesn't get confused. I've seen it get confused a couple times, and it was just infuriating trying to figure out what was going on. Now we're going to add a text. Let's call this display. And the actual text, I'm going to say root.title. So in case you're wondering, here's the root, and the property we've added is title. We've added the other property, color. And let's go ahead and drop an anchor in this too. Now we want to be able to interact with this, so of course we need a mouse area. Don't really need an ID, but I'm going to add it. And we want to monitor the pressed and release signals, so we're going to say on pressed. And this is where you can just say parent.color, or you can actually say the myRec. This is part of the reason why I actually will embed like a mouse area in the rectangle. That way I can just say parent. I don't have to go back and go, oh, what was the name of this thing? I can just say parent. Makes it super, super easy. And then on released. So actually I got this backwards. I want to say color clicked. So when we press, we want to do the color clicked, and when we release, we want to return it back to its normal color. looks pretty confusing. Let's go over it real quick. So we have an invisible item in there. We have a rectangle. In the rectangle, we have a text and a mouse area. And of course, we need to set that anchor. Otherwise, we have an invisible mouse area with a width and height of 0, 0. All right, let's drop this in and see what it looks like. Now, do we have to do any snazzy imports or any kind of craziness? No, we really don't. We can just say my button and then just add it in. Save and run.
What the fuck?
And it works. So let's make a few of these and let's customize the properties. So let's just get rid of that. I'm going to say middle. Boy, I screwed that all up, didn't I? And I'm just going to make a property called middle so I know where the middle is, minus 50. And I'm just going to say my button. And let's call this button 1. Color, I want this normal color to be red. I want the color clicked to be orange. And let's put the title in here of button 1. Pretty slick, huh? Let's run this, see what that looks like.
That's it.
Very cool. Now let's make some more buttons. I'm just going to grab this, copy, paste. This is going to be called button 2. Button 2, I want to say, let's center this bad boy. So I'm going to say so I'm just going to take the parent's width divided by 2 minus this button's width divided by 2 gets us dead center. And then we're going to put that in the middle on the y-axis. And then let's make this blue. And say button 2. And we're just going to keep adding some more here. So I'm going to say button 3. And button 3, I'm just going to say parent dot width minus 200. And let's go ahead and keep this on the middle y-axis here. And let's call this green. Freen? Freen's not even a color. Green. There we go. Title. I want to do a multi-line title here. So I'm going to say button 3.
Boys, nice. HTML.
Let's test that and see what that looks like.
What?
There's our buttons. So we've got this one, button 2, and button 3, and it has multi-line. So we have inline HTML. We're going to add a big long button on the bottom and show that you can actually put some special encoding in there. It gets really, really cool. And let's call that button 4.
No.
And this is going to be in the center, and let's do middle plus 120. We're going to make this light blue. And this title, we're just going to say bold. Italic. Sometimes HTML is not the easiest thing to type. There we go. Turn the italic off, and then I want to underline that. And we're going to say button. So we've got a bunch of inline HTML. Let's go ahead and save and run. And we want to actually change that a little bit. We want to set that width to really fill that thing up. So let's go ahead and say width. There we go. Super long button. Don't like it that thick, so I'm going to say height. And let's put the height at just some crazy number like 35. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Once we get a little more in depth in components, I'll show you how to actually add a signal so that you can do like an on-click, on-press, things like that in your component.
Huh? Should I press it? Oh, what the fuck? Oh. Uh. 42%. Kok nggak bisa anjir? Apa sih? Kok berat jelas? Woi. Anjir. Anjir, dikit. Maka iki kah? Anjir, apa sih? Kacau. Apa sih anjir? Boleh? Oh iya. Terlalu. Bawah position. Okay.
In this video, we're going to talk about object positioning, specifically using the XY axis. And we're going to demonstrate how to drag an object and how to get real-time feedback on that object's position. All right, let's dive in here. First thing we need to do is make a rectangle. So let's say rectangle. We'll call this my shape. And we're going to add a text in the mouse area. It's not truly a label, but we're going to call it label. Why not? And then mouse area. And we want to actually drop an anchor for this text. I'm going to center this in the parent. And then we want to set some basic properties here. So let's say width 100, height 100, and let's go ahead and set the color. There we go. Save and run, and in all of its beauty, there is our rectangle right over in the corner there. So let's do some positioning. First thing we're going to do is we want to make a JavaScript function because we want to be able to track when this position changes. And we're going to do that using the object lifecycle. We haven't really talked about it because it's a bit more complex than what this series is going to cover, but you need to be aware that it does exist. So we're going to say function update console.log. And because this function lives in the rectangle, we have access to all of the rectangle's properties. So we can say x, which is the x position of the rectangle. And that probably looks a little bit weird, but it's the x position, a string, and the y position. We could do z as well if we felt like it, but it's not going to change for this video. Then we're going to say label text, and we want to actually set that text. And we're going to do a little bit of JavaScript. We're going to say math round. I promise we will cover JavaScript in a future videos, but for now, if you don't know JavaScript, just kind of take it on a leap of faith. What we're doing is not super complex anyways, so pretty self-explanatory, but just to run it through, we're calling the math library and we're calling the round function. Otherwise, x and y are going to be these long floating point numbers. It'll be like 34 point something like that, and we don't want that. We want just like 34 or 45 or whatever it's going to be. So we're just going to change the text to x and then a string and then y. So how do we call this JavaScript function? Well, first thing, let's actually set the position. So we're going to say x and y. And if we felt adventurous, we could say anchors center in parent. Now, which one of these is going to win out? This is where it gets a little complex. Notice how the anchor is going to win. It's not at 100, 100. Let's flip that around. So we're setting the anchor first, then setting 100 by 100. Notice how the anchor always wins. Something to bear in mind throughout this video. The anchor will always win. Say it with me. All right. Now we're going to say component, and this is part of the object lifecycle, and we want onCompleted. And then we're going to call our JavaScript function. This is part of all of the components that ever exist in QML. It's part of their lifecycle. When it's onCompleted, it emits a signal, and we are now consuming that and calling our function. Notice how it says -50 by -50. Huh? What are we talking about here? Part of that's because of the anchoring system. Let's get rid of that anchor and see what it says. Now it works, 100 by 100. So where'd that -50 come from? Well, basically under the hood, what's going on is when you set an anchor, QML ignores any manual positioning. So your numbers are not going to be reliable. We want to now take this and be able to drag it around and get instant feedback on that. So let's go in here. Drag and drop is a complex topic. So we're just going to focus on the drag target. And the drag target basically says, hey, when the mouse is dragging, what are we doing? What are we moving? What are we manipulating? So the drag target is going to be the parent, or the rectangle. You could set it to anything you want. You could set it to the text. You could even set it to the mouse area, although that probably wouldn't end well. Point being, you can do just about anything you want here. Let's go ahead and reset that anchor. And I want to say on X changed, we're going to also update. And on Y changed, also update. Let's see if we get different results here. Notice how now, suddenly, we have actual numbers, even though we have an anchor set. So what's happening here is component onComplete is firing, but then it's setting the X and Y positions and calling the on X changed, on Y changed, and we're getting the true numbers. If we try to drag, we cannot. Nothing's happening. See, output is flashing down here, so we've got a bunch of output, but nothing's happening. We can even just clear this out, bring it back up just to see that, hey, yep, we are trying, but it's not moving. You've probably guessed it's due to this anchor. So let's kill that anchor. And I'm going to actually group those together. Now, when we run this, ta-da! Notice how we get the numbers in real time. But if we stop it and restart it, it just says text because we commented out that component onComplete. That's why I really wanted to bring that to your attention, because a lot of times you're going to say, hey, I need to set something as soon as this component is loaded. In that case, it would be component onCompleted. And let's just regroup this back down with its buddies. Preferably in the order they're going to fire off in. It doesn't really matter though. And let's run this. Now we have 100 by 100 and we can move them around just freely.
Ora ana suarane.
We understand X, Y positioning, so we have X and Y. Z are the layers. Remember, think of it like you're looking down at a desk, and the first thing you set down is on the bottom, and you set another thing on top and on top and on top. But now, we can drag these things around. And we can change the Z-axis. Pretty cool. All right, let's take a look at this. First thing we're going to do, add new. Going to make a QML file. Let's call this my shape. And we may reuse my shape for the next few videos. Let's go ahead and make a rectangle. We're going to set that to gray. Width 100. Height 100. And let's make a mouse area. we're going to fill the parent, which in case is the rectangle. Now we're going to set the drag target. Remember, drag target is, hey, if we're dragging, what are we dragging? And in this case, it's just simply the parent or the rectangle. Now, we want to actually change the Z order of this thing. So let's go in here. And let's do onClicked. And we're going to say parent.z++. So really, if we click, we're going to take the parent and increment the Z position. Not super hard to understand. Let's go in here. And let's just test this thing out first and foremost. My shape. Save and run. Let's see this thing. Yep, there it is. And we can drag it around. All right, cool. So let's make a few of these. We'll call it red, green, and blue. There's our blue, there's our green, there's our red. And if we click, pops it up, pops it up, pops it up. So let's position these, make it look pretty, and then we're pretty much done. Let's make a property here. We're going to call this mid-x. And it's going to be width divided by 2. And we're going to make another property. Let's call this mid-y. Short for middle x, middle y. I almost said middle earth, but anyways, that's a different story altogether. Lord of the Rings series. Alright, so there's mid-x, mid-y. Let's go ahead and position these out. And we're going to say mid-x minus, and then do a little bit of math here. We're going to say width. I'm not a fan of mathematics, so don't worry, it's not going to get super complex. And then y is going to be the mid-y minus height divided by 2 minus, and we're just going to offset this. So really what we're doing is we're setting x and y, and we're going to say take the middle minus our width divided by 2, and then our y divided by 2, or our y minus our height divided by 2 minus 30. Got a little ahead of myself there. Now let's go ahead and let's just do the magic of copy and paste. Set our green. And then we're just going to do an offset. There's an easier way of doing this, which we're going to cover in a future video. I'm just letting you know, this is a simple, easy way to do an offset. And then let's just go bang, and we're going to say plus 30. And let's switch these around. I want this one to be plus 55 and this one to be minus 55. In case you're really confused what's going on, it's going to look something like this. So we have our red, which is at the mid-x divided by 2. And then our y is in the middle, but it's bumped up a little bit because we have that negative 30. Green, same thing. Blue, same thing. We're just positioning these around, making it.
Okay. So cute. Astaghfirullahaladzim. La ilaha illallah. Muhammadur Rasulullah. Islam, yes. Oh, goblok makan. Makan rais sakit mau bangsat. Oh, iki dong tak ngane saya. Goblok. Kita import bill. Ada progress bar sekarang. X sama dengan root.height bagi 2. Iya anjir. Yang 100. Coba. Nah, kematian mungkin nek tak gawe ID. Aku punya ide progress bar. Ini nek di green, terus mungkin progress bar dot value plus sama dengan 0,1. I don't know, maybe coba. Sasuga 0,02 maybe. Anjay, loadingnya melaku bosku. Setiga warna sih. Color. Parameternya apa sih? Background, baseline, terus. Anjir udah banget. Oke, kita baca dokumentasi. Ini setiga background color kah? Apa sih? Orang anjir. Piye boleh balik? Background green lagi. Kita coba. Progress bercolor. Properties. Progress bercolor. Progress bar style. Styling. Style. Kok stupid sih bangsat. Style. Progress bar toh. Coba nak. Style. Progress. Kok rano style? Rano style aja. Masa sih Rano? Anjir, anaknya apa anjir? Ini gaji dokumentasinya anjir, mereka mangkel. Aduh. Iki cute pir anjir. Cute quick siji. Anjir. You mixing from kit canvas. Background rectangle. Content item. Oh. Kayak kit siji kit loro jan bangga jelas tenan iki. Oke, saya coba bos. Wih. Koma hitam background content item. Coba lihat itu lah jebir iki piye anjir. Konten item apa ini? Airnya turun tidak terkira. Cobalah tengok progres. Oh, goblok. Iki kayak kinjir. Nah. Dan baru benar bosku. Visual position. Ya langsung rectangle aja. Oh, nak siram langsung full. Oh, nice. Mama was born in the west side. You said I was born in the game on the west side. You say Mama was born in the west side. You say when I was born in the west side. Anjir, ada sabarianya galor. Tak gawe yo. Engko lah. Semangat bang.
This video is going to be super simple. We're going to talk about the column.
Terima kasih semua yang sudah menyemangati.
Stacking things on top of each other. So if you're creating a column, we're going to reuse my shape from the last video, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And yes, we can move these things around. So let's go ahead and kill that. In case you skipped the last video, my shape is just a custom component that consists of a rectangle and a mouse area as a child. The mouse area, of course, fills the rectangle and has a drag target of the rectangle. Essentially, this allows us to drag that around the screen. When we click the mouse area, it takes the parent, or the rectangle, and increments the Z order. Remember, Z order is if you're looking down at a desk and you have a stack of papers, the lower numbers at the bottom, the higher numbers at the top of the stack. So it's just moving things around up and down. Alright, let's jump in here. And column. Dead simple. They couldn't have made this any more simple. We're going to say my shape. And we're going to set the color. Let's grab this, copy and paste. Blue, and let's make another one green. Save and run, and ta-da, they are stacked. Nice column. Notice it's at 0, 0. So we want to move this whole thing to the center, and we want to space these out a little bit. Looking at the column QML type, you can see there's a couple really neat. I'm going to move and green. And at 0, 0. So we want to space at the column QML type. You can see there's a couple really neat features. For example, spacing. So you guessed it, this thing is just like any other component, and you can do some dead simple things. And their example is pretty much on par with what I'm showing you. We're using anchors. We're going to center in, and we're going to center this in the parent. And then let's set the spacing. And let's say we want 2 pixels for the spacing. Ta-da! Now we took this a step further from the actual official static rectangles.
Can I?
We can actually move things around, and we have a custom component that we designed. presenting the row. Do you have all your ducks in a row? That's a popular expression. But anyways, the row is very simple. It just takes components and puts them going across, where the column put them going up and down like this. Super simple, super easy to understand, and it's actually so simple, I'm literally going to be lazy and just copy and paste the code from the previous video, and let's just auto indent that. We're reusing the MyShape component that we've done in the last few videos. It's just a rectangle with a mouse area, and I'm probably going to spend more time talking about this than actually explaining the row. Basically, we have the drag target, which is the rectangle, so we can drag it around, and when we click, the parent is going up the Z stack. That's a lot of talking. So, notice we've got the column. Let's say we run this, and everything's just the way we expect it, but, you know, oh no, our boss comes in and says, column, I wanted a row. You're like, oh, there goes my whole afternoon. I have to take this and type R-O-W. It's literally that simple. The difference between row and column is literally just the component name. They're virtually identical under the hood, and it just positions them on the screen. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to memorize some obscure fact about one or the other. They just work. And
Yes.
we can go back in and reposition things as we want because we're using the component that we built.
Nggih. Nggih, Mas Brian. Grid layout kayak Flutter gimana aja.
In this video, we're going to cover the grid. Now, the grid is a nice combination
Wah,
of a
kita
row and a column.
Copas.
You can see here, really good example. You have rows, you have columns, and you can define how many rows and columns you have. Although, there are a couple little caveats you have to be aware of.
Anjir.
Here, we just have the default settings, so it's just going to keep going and going as much as it thinks it needs to. Let's go ahead and take a look. We'll say grid. And of course we have MyShape from our previous videos. In case you've skipped the last few videos, MyShape is a custom component which is a rectangle, and we have a mouse area so we can drag around those little objects, and if we click them it goes up the Z stack. Alright, let's go back here and we're going to say anchors. Let's go ahead and drop an anchor, center in parent, and let's make a few MyShapes here. These could be rectangles. We don't necessarily have to do MyShape. We could do something like this. But then we, of course, have to do like a width. So we could do something like that if we really wanted to. We can also set the spacing. Let's go ahead and set that to 5, and let's see what that looks like. Nice and neat. Now the reason why we're using the MyShape is we can actually drag that and move it around and move it up the Z stack, where rectangle is just static. It's not going to do anything. So let's get rid of that guy. And let's just drop a bunch of these on here. Picking some random colors. I'm going to say black. Running out of color names here.
Anjir.
Gray.
The fuck?
Just going to add a few more.
Anjir, keren juga.
Let's see what this looks like. Alright, pretty much where we were, and of course we can drag these and move them around and move them up and around the Z stack. How do we really define what this looks like? Under the hood, there's rows, which is currently at -1, and columns, which is currently at -1. Let's demonstrate that. See, it looks exactly the same. If we were to set this to, say, 1 row, 1 column, we have exactly 1 MyShape, or do we? We can actually move these around, and you can see what's happening here is it's just stacking them one on top of the other. And let's do that again. Last thing, one column. And this is where,
Yeah.
and let's do 2 columns. Now we're going to have clipping. And when I say clipping, I'm not talking true clipping in the sense that, hey, it's missing off the screen. I mean, it's stacked on top of each other. So we have orange, and ta-da! There's our hidden item right there. I'm just going to kind of offset that a bit. But there's no hidden item here. So let's just move these down. Orange, there was the brown, there was the teal. So what's going on here is it starts here, and then it moves to the left, and then when it hits its limit, it drops down. Hits its limit, drops down, and then starts over again. That's kind of how you can predict its pattern a little bit. Basically, it always starts at 0, 0, and it will just increment once it hits its hard limit, which is defined by your rows and columns, bumps down.
Oke, kita sholat dulu guys. Sholat is number 1. Oke, aku gak ikut dengan tulisan sedang sholat lah. Saya I don't know, maybe around here. Saya mau teksnya mau di copy sih. Terus centering current sedang sholat dan nah terus selesai saya tak gawe bulu so aduh sholat yes class discard class anything that's suspicious. Oke, terus kita paten ini Dude. Yes. Ah 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 ah. Gak tahu lagi saya. Melihat tayangan sendiri. Tetep. Cek 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 cek. Ya. Akan bisa ngomain gini. Ya, I'm back.
Bumps down, starts over. Pretty easy to understand, but once you start using it, especially if you're dynamically generating objects, you're going to see some weirdness like that, where you'll run your application and you go, now, wait a minute, where's red? And it's actually just buried.
Where's red? Okay.
In this video, we're going to look at the flow layout. It's a little bit...
Bosku. Okay, so let's update this. Ikuzo! I went there to devil. Ah, fuck. Alias. Mari kita, iya. I'll be back. Mbak Chinese. Oh iya, orang gak komit goblok. Saya tanggal berapa sih? 22/12. 15 3 Oke, sudah.
different, and it's not really what you...
Same.
affecting. Basically, items are positioned next to each other or on top of each other depending on a layout direction. You can see here. Also, we're going to talk about clipping. Clipping is when something gets cut off. You can see that as we move these rectangles around. Alright, so let's dive in and take a look. First things first, we are reusing my shape again so that we can drag things around and we can change the Z order on the stack. If you have no idea what my shape is, you need to rewind a few videos. We've been using this for a while now. It's just a custom component that we've already built. Alright, let's jump in here. First things first, let's make a rectangle. And let's say color. Who doesn't like a pink rectangle? Come on, guys. Let's go ahead and drop an anchor. We're going to center in the parent. Width, let's make this 300. Height, and let's make this 400. In case you're wondering, is there a specific order you should put these in? No, it really doesn't matter. When QML starts up, it loads your component and tries to figure out every single property, and it just basically reads it like a book, starting at the top, going down. It does not really matter what order those are in. I've seen some people that are hyper vigilant about having these in alphabetical order, and it just truly does not matter. Alright, so we're going to add clip, and we're going to say false, which is by default false. Just going to add it there so you understand that it exists. Let's go ahead and put a flow in here. Now this flow, we're going to center in the parent. So we're going to drop an anchor. It exists. Let's go ahead and put a flow in here. Now this flow, we're going to center in the parent. So we're going to drop an anchor. I'm going to do the magic of copy and paste, put some notes in here for you. So flow has what's called a layout direction and a flow. That's why it's called a flow. It's kind of hard to really wrap your head around until you see it in action here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some my shapes. And we'll say color red. And I'm just going to blast through these real quick. We're just going to make a bunch of them here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Red, yellow, green, I'll say blue. I'm just randomly picking colors here. Black, gray, teal, brown, and let's just add one more just for effect here. Orange. Let's go ahead and save and run, see what this looks like. Alright, so you can see what's going on here. Flow is going right across. It's just basically, you know, just putting them all in a row. That is part of the direction. So let's actually go in here. And we're going to say flow. This is the confusing bit. We're in a flow, but we're modifying the flow property. This and this are two different things. This is the actual flow layout, or this is the flow property of the flow layout. It's a little bit confusing. I wish they had done it a little different, but so we're going to set the flow, and we're going to set this top to bottom. Notice how it goes top to bottom. So flow can dynamically go from a row to a column and a column to a row. It's actually pretty neat the way that works. But you notice if you look for a row or columns, it's not in there. So what does that really mean? It means that you get to choose one or the other, but not both. And you can't do like a grid where you can say, I want so many in this specific pattern. So really get to choose from top to bottom or left to right. Let's go ahead and I'm going to plop some notes in here. So let's look to left to right. Same thing we've already seen. There is a left to right, but there's no right to left. So it's basically the same thing. You can't really do like a reverse order or anything like that. So let's keep it at left to right. Let's set some spacing here. Now we're going to play around with clipping. Let's go ahead and rerun this so you can see what I'm talking about here. This flow is a child of this rectangle, but you notice how it's going way outside the bounds of this rectangle. See? Ta-da! If we turn clipping on, there's a hard clip right here. It's almost like you're looking through a window. You can't go past the bounds of this window. You actually can, but it will get clipped. So this right here will be invisible on this side. Look at that line and that pink rectangle here. Anything out of those bounds will get clipped or cut off. So whenever you see the word clip, think of like taking a pair of scissors and actually clipping it, because that's what's going to happen here in about 2 seconds. So we're going to switch that to true, rerun this, and voila. Oh no, where'd they go? They're still there. They're just off to the sides here. They're just being clipped, like we demonstrated in the intro.
Anchor. Ini dia yang ingin gue pelajari. Anchor, what the fuck is anchor, man?
This video is all about anchors. What are they?
Yeah.
Why are they? And when do we need them? We played with anchors a little bit, but we're going to really dive into these things. So a good example of an anchor, let's grab this red rectangle, and we're using the my shape so we know we can drag this around, and oh, the entire thing moves. That's exactly what an anchor does. It anchors it to another component or into another object. Doesn't matter if it's the parent or a centered object or some other object. We're also going to redo this my shape the correct way. There's a couple little bugs that we've introduced because we did it, well, the lazy man way. We just slapped a rectangle in there. Really, we need to encapsulate that inside of an item. Let's talk about some of these bugs real quick. So let's jump in here, and we're going to add a my shape. And let's call this ID shape central. And let's go ahead and anchor this. So we're going to say anchors, center in parent. Pretty self-explanatory. We've done this before. Really, it just takes the shape, doesn't modify it, slaps it into the center of the parent. And now we want to add some sort of text property here. So let's say text. Interesting. Well, I don't want to do it this way because then and we're going to add a bunch of these my shapes, every single time we have to add another text. So we're smart enough now, we understand what a property is. Let's go in here and let's say ta-da, and then we can actually add in a text. Maybe if IntelliSense wants to let us type here. There we go. And we can say parent.text. Now, depending on your version of QML, this right here will cause a bug. And the bug is subtle, but it's just extremely frustrating. You can't figure it out. On mine, it doesn't cause it, but we're going to say text. Notice how there's no bug. On some of your screens, depending on your version, it's going to say M16 invalid property, even though you know it's a property. You can see it. It's right here. So you'll look up some documentation, and it'll tell you to suppress it, and you'll have to do something like this. / at disable check M16, which is how you disable that bug. And we can get rid of that. Notice how it's unexpected token. And it says unnecessary message suppression. So my version's smart enough to know that we really shouldn't be doing this. This is a known bug. Now when I say known bug, well, it's not really a QML bug. It's more of a design issue, meaning we did the my shape incorrectly. Really shouldn't be done this way. So let's go ahead and let's get rid of this. I just wanted you to be aware in case you get this M16 bug off to the side and it won't run your QML file. So let's just comment this out. And let's do the my shape correctly. And let's call this root. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add in some properties. So we're going to say gray is the color. Remember, when in doubt, if you don't know what the property type is, you can just say var. We'll change in future versions of QML.
Ngantuk jir.
And we could say text. Now we can right click, toggle comment selection, cut that, and just paste in. Let's get rid of this guy because it's a bit redundant. And let's move this. So now we need to position that item. Or I shouldn't say position, we need to modify that item. So I'm going to say this is a default of 100 by 100. And now we need to actually modify this rectangle. So here we're going to drop an anchor. Remember, filling will fill the parent. It's very self-explanatory. So this rectangle is going to take the entire item, which is 100 by 100. Very self-explanatory, but sometimes you'll forget to do it and you're wondering, what the heck? All right, so color, this is where we're going to say. A lot of times you'll see people do this. They'll say, it is the color, because you can actually do that. Well, it's not going to work well because you're trying to access the color of the rectangle, and we want to access this color property in the item. So we're going to use the identifier, in this case root, and we're going to say root color. Don't really need an identifier in here. Don't really need an identifier in there. And parent.text isn't going to work because our parent is this rectangle, so we need to switch that to root. That way we're grabbing that text. Mouse area, this is where it gets a little bit interesting here. Because we are now encapsulating this entire thing in here, the drag target can't be the parent because we're just going to try and drag it around inside of the might item. So what we need to do is up that parent. So let's say here. So whatever this is in, we're going to set the drag target to its parent. That way we can freely move it around its parent. Makes sense. It's a little bit complicated the way they do this, and it's not super clear until you really do it and try it out yourself. But basically, if you left that drag target as parent, it's just going to try and drag the rectangle inside of the item. And in reality, we want to drag the item inside of its parent. Whew. All right, I think we got that down. Let's go ahead and kill that. Notice because we followed a good design pattern, we don't have to retool what's going on here. We can actually just say color. And let's make this, I need a good color. Something that really speaks to my soul. No, I'm kidding. We're just going to leave it as gray. So anyways, let's save, run. Let's test this out. Sure enough, oh, we got a bit of a bug. We need to center that. So let's go ahead, go back in here. Ah, yes. Also self-explanatory. What it does not modify the width or the height, just takes it as it is and shoots it right into the center of the parent. In this case, the parent's the rectangle. Double check. Yep. My shape is now working perfectly. We are also centered in the parent, and I want to just kind of show something here. So we're going to take a rectangle. Say width, let's say 25, height. Let's go ahead and set the color, and I want a nice pink rectangle. Why? Why not? Let's play around with the anchors here. So far we have none. That's the default. There's just no anchor. And if we save and run, it is just at 0, 0. And then we can do the XY position if we really felt like it, but there's no anchor. And ta-da, it goes bye-bye. Very frustrating that it does that. All right, so let's go ahead and set an anchor here. We're going to center in the parent. Ta-da. There we go. We're going to change that so that it works that correctly. And what I mean by that is, you notice how that pink thing kept going bye-bye? That's this guy right here. Because what we're doing is we're taking the rectangle and flipping it over in the Z stack. Let's try that again. Now, that pink thing doesn't go away. Flipping it over. That's this guy correctly. We're going to change that so that it works that correctly. And what I mean by that is, you notice how that pink thing kept going bye-bye. That's this guy right here. Because what we're doing is we're taking the rectangle and flipping it over in the Z stack. Let's try that again. Now, that pink thing doesn't go away. In case you need a recap of what just happened, let's go back here. What is the parent of the mouse area? Well, it's the rectangle. So when we run this, we're going to bring that rectangle up to the top when we click on it. The pink square is still there. It's just underneath. And that's not where we want it. So let's say root. This guy, ta-da! We're going to elevate that whole object up. And because this is a child, it stays right where it's belonging. Now, we're going to do anchors, fill. Pretty obvious what this is going to do. But because we modified that my shape, we can now drag the whole thing, even with the pink object, over it. Now let's say I want to take this little pink rectangle and put it over in the bottom right. It's that simple. You don't have to mess around with width and height and calculations or any of that. You just say, hey, put it over in the right. Same thing with the bottom. Ta-da! Now it's over in the bottom. And we can still grab it, drag it around, or we could drag it over here. It doesn't really matter. So anchors are extremely intuitive, and it's almost embarrassing how simple they are because people will really, really struggle with these things. So let's go ahead and make a few my shapes. The rectangle is a good example because it's very intuitive. As it's a child, it's easy to go, okay, we're going to just anchor this to the parent. Let's go ahead and make what's called a disconnected object or a disconnected component, meaning it's not a child. So this my shape is not a child of this my shape. This is just off doing its own thing. And what we're going to do here is we're going to grab some text. Let's call this center. Say this is top. Let's give this an ID. And we need to give this a good color. Something that goes good with the drapes. Why not? Green. Everybody likes color green. Save and run. And what do you think is going to happen? Sure enough, it's over here because there's no anchor. By default, no anchor. So it's just over here. We can still grab it, but notice how the whole thing now moves around. Kind of crazy how that works. We want to anchor this appropriately. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this guy and we're going to say anchors dot bottom, and we're going to put this to shape central's top, and then anchors dot left is going to be shape central's left. Save and run. So what we've done is we've said, hey, take shape top, this guy, anchor the bottom of this to the center's top. So we're just gluing it right on there. But now we want to take the left and line it up with the other left. So now it's nice and seamed up. And we can grab it. And it doesn't matter which one we grab, they're glued together. Let's go ahead and grab this. And now we can just start slinging these things out there. Let's call this shape bottom. And from here, it's just be or to, you guessed it, the left side of shape central. Let's demonstrate that. So the right side is glued a little bigger. Let's go 50 by 50. 100, these are 50 by 50. We do not have clipping enabled, so now we can. Actually, let's make it a little bigger. Let's go 50 by 50. Save and run. So the items are a little bit different, and now we can drag them around and they're free. Now when I say they're a little bit different, the items are 100 by 100, these are 50 by 50. We do not have clipping enabled, so now we can drag them around wherever we feel like, even though they're past what's called clip. Meaning if we were to save and run, the actual item is like this, and we are dragging it beyond its clip barrier. Let's go ahead and flip these back the way they were. And let's say ta-da, back the way it was. This video we're going to talk about margins. Margins can be deceptively simple. Now I say deceptively because once you start trying to figure them out, you're like, what does this even mean? So here we have a red rectangle with a yellow rectangle. The yellow is a child of the red, and you see we have this nice, neat little, I think that's like 5 pixels, and then this margin here, which is 50. So we're going to figure out how to make that work. Let's go ahead and jump in here. And let's say width, let's make this 300. Height, let's make this 400. Let's set the color to red. And let's go ahead and throw an anchor in here. I'm just going to center in the parent. Save, run, and sure enough, there is our big red rectangle. Let's go ahead and add our child. We're going to set the color. Actually, I'm pretty lazy. Let's just do this. Copy. And let's go wham, paste. Let's make this 100 by 100 and set this to yellow. By default, there are no anchors. And because there's no anchors, you guessed it, it's 0, 0, and there's no margin. All right, so let's go ahead and let's figure this out. So we're going to say anchors, margins. Oh, now we're getting somewhere. We're going to set a what's called a global anchors. You guessed it, it's 0, 0, and there's no margin. All right, so let's go ahead and let's figure this out. So we're going to say anchors, margins. Oh, now we're getting somewhere. We're going to set a what's called a global margin, which is all margins, to 50. Now when we run this, don't expect it, because by default, nothing changed because there's no anchor. If we go in here, notice how if we try to look for margin, it just isn't there. So in short, we need to set an anchor. So let's go ahead and say anchors left equal parent dot left. Ta-da! Notice how, because we've set the left anchor, the margin 50 is now there, but it's not on the top because there's no top margin. That's one of the deceptive things here, is that it's going to look at what your anchors are set, in this case left, and will only set the margin for the anchors that are set, not for anchors that are not set. Let's go ahead and say anchors, and I want to set this to bottom is going to be the parent's bottom. And you notice we have our nice all anchors, or I should say all margins on all anchors that are set, in this case left and bottom, and it's a nice 50 pixels. Now we're going to look at how to do a specific margin. We're going to take this left right here and drop that down. So I'm going to say anchors, margins, but instead of margins, I'm going to say left margin. You notice how when you go in there, you can do left, right, top, bottom. We're going to say the left margin, we want this to be 15. Save and run, and voila, 15 pixels, perfect. Big takeaway from this is if there is no anchor set, the margin will not be set as well. this video, we're going to make a very simple image viewer. Now, when I say simple, I'm talking based off the skills and knowledge that we've acquired up to this point. We're going to make a super simple interface with some layouts. We're going to make a custom component, and we're going to make that component a button, and it's going to be responsive to when we mouse over it, and when we click it, it's going to change the image. Now, this is going to be what I call an end-to-end video, which is raw, unedited, unfiltered. You're going to see every step, every mistake end to end, because I get a lot of feedback from people saying it looks like you modified the video at 5 minutes and 32 seconds. Did you skip a step? And yeah, actually I'll make mistakes. I'm human just like you. So I'll actually chop the video, edit it, go back to where I didn't make the mistake. So anyways, you're going to see every mistake. There may even be some curse words. So first steps first, right click our resource file. We're going to open that in the editor. Let's make a prefix. And we're going to add some images. So we're going to add files. And I already had some files staged out there, just cat, dog, fish, and the cute logo. Voila. Go ahead and save all. Make sure those appear. They do. They're beautiful. I love that cat. Awesome picture. Anyways, let's go in here. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to make a component. Let's go here. Add new, and we need a good solid name. Let's call this hover button. Let's go ahead and give this an ID. Let's call this root, and we're going to add some properties here. So we're going to say property, color, and we want to give this name of color. And I'm just going to give it some crazy colors here. So basically, we're just going to make a button out of a rectangle, and we want it to be able to, you want to be able to click it and, set the normal color and the hover color. So here's the normal color. This is when they mouse over that thing. Let's make pink. Why not? I'm just making some crazy colors here. And then let's call this text color. The default for that will be white because, a button's got to have some sort of text in it. And then, let's say, let's call this text hover. So when they're actually hovering over it, what color do we want that text? And we want it to be black, because white text on a pink background is just going to be really hard to read. And now we want to go ahead, and we're going to do what's called an alias this time. So we're going to say alias, and this is going to be a title. So what does this really mean, alias? That's an interesting type. So really what an alias does is it points to a child somewhere in this little stack that we're building here. So we don't have one yet. We're going to comment that out, but I'm just leaving that as a placeholder. I'm going to put X in there. And we're going to just make another one. And this is going to point to a mouse area that doesn't exist yet. So let's go ahead and flesh this out. Probably won't make sense what we're doing with that alias until we really flesh this out, so bear with me. So we're going to make this rectangle.
Right. Aduh, ngantuk Makan dulu. Tuh, 빠르게.
And we're going to say height, and we want this to be the root.height, and width will be the root.width. In case you're wondering, couldn't you just set an anchor? Absolutely, we could. Let's see. Color, we want this to be the root.color. And clip, yes, we want this to clip. Why? Because why not? We want it, so we're gonna make it happen. All right, so we're gonna add a text, and here we're gonna say display. Now because we're giving this an ID, and we don't want to do like some string, we want them to actually be able to modify this thing. We're gonna make an alias, and we're gonna call it title, and the title is actually an alias for the display component. In this case, it's a text component. So in case you need a recap here, property alias basically points to another component. So they have all the properties of that component right there. You don't have to like list every single property of this component. It's an alias for it. Whew. It's kind of like a nickname. So if you have a nickname for a friend of yours. All right, so here we can just say, let's go ahead and do anchors, center in, and we want to say parent. Color, let's go ahead and do the root.text color. And we want to set the font bold to true. So we're getting a little bit in depth here, and we're getting a little nitpicky. I like that word, nitpicky. And now we're going to make a mouse area. And this is going to be our other property alias. So if we just grab this name, property alias area is going to point to, you guessed it, alias area. So why would you make a property alias? It's if you wanted to expose this child object without having to go through and make a property that points to every property of the child. It's incredibly handy. And it's an awesome feature, to be brutally honest with you. It can be a little scary at first, and it can be mischievous. Now, we want to do something here. Now, what do we want to do? You notice how we have a hover color, a text color, but we don't have like an actual press color, like something actually happened here. So, what are we going to do? We're going to say, we need to add some more properties here. So we have hover color. Let's make click color. And we want click color to be
fucking hell.
Orange. Why not? I don't really know. Anyways, click color. Go down here, and we're going to say the parent.color equal, and let's actually do the full root click color. That way we don't have any little gotchas in the near future. The opposite of on pressed is of course on released, and here we want to say parent.color. We want this to be the hover color. Now you may be thinking, why wouldn't you just make that the normal color? Because when you're released, you're still moused over it, so it's still hovering over it. Whew, a lot of typing, but I think we got it. Recap, we're making an item. Item's non-visual. We've got some properties. A couple of those are just aliases that point right back to the component. And then we're setting all those properties. And we've got some mouse interaction going on here. All right, now for the little bit of fun. This is going to be some typing. Let's go back into our main. Save, run. Let's make sure this thing actually builds and runs. Good. No mistakes thus far. And let's start banging this thing out. Now before we do, I want to set some properties in here. So I'm going to say property, properties are a great thing. Use them, love them. So we're going to say color, and let's call this BG color. Styling is a little bit more in depth. It's something we'll cover in the intermediate and advanced tutorials. Because we're still in beginner land, we haven't really touched on them. So we're just going to set color. I'm going to say 5A. Actually, I'm just going to copy and paste because I'm lazy. In case you're wondering what color that is, you just mouse over. It's like that weird kind of slate gray. And then I'm just going to, through the magic of copy and paste, make a couple of these. Call that button color. And let's make this hover color. Make that lime green. And let's go with click color. And let's make this yellow. Now, why am I basically reinventing the wheel here? Couldn't I just set all these colors in the button itself? Absolutely, I could. I'm just showing you how you can interact with these properties. So if you don't want to do all this, you can just put all this right in here, but then you're kind of stuck with those colors and you have no way of really changing them. So let's go in here, and actually I want to make one more. And I'm going to make a size 100. All right, now we can get cooking on this thing. So what we need to do now is make a rectangle. And let's call this background. Color is going to be, and let's give this an ID up here. That way we can access all these properties. Instead of saying parent, we can just say root. So it's going to be root, not is prototype of, root dot color. Oops, not color, background color. This is what I mean by an end-to-end video. I would have edited that out, but some people like seeing me make those mistakes. I asked why one time, and they actually had a pretty good response. They said, we like seeing that not everybody's perfect, that even the instructors make mistakes. And let me tell you, instructors make a lot of mistakes. I end up editing a lot of these videos. All right, so parent.height. So what's going on here? It is 100 wide by the height. Ta-da! So this is where our little buttons are going to live, and then we've got a backdrop here. Interesting. Okay, there's probably an easier way of doing this, and I'm doing it a little bit complex, but I want to show you how I would do this. All right, so let's go in here, and let's make another rectangle. I'm just going to grab this guy here. And this is just going to be called rectangle. The ever descriptive rectangle. All right, so we're going to set the X to 100. We could have actually done an anchor. Set the Y to 0. Now let's do the width. And this is going to be the parent.width minus X. And let's do the height. And this is going to be the parent.height. In case you're a little bit more advanced in this video and you're going, why didn't you do it this way, or why didn't you do it that way? You're absolutely right. I'm just trying to do only what we've learned so far. So there are other ways of doing it, and admittedly better ways of doing it. But we're only tackling with what we know so far. We're going to add image here. It's going to appropriately be named image. And let's go ahead and set the anchors. And we want margins. Set that global margin 25. Let's go ahead and fill, and we are going to fill the parent. We're going to set that fill mode, and it's going to be image dot preserve aspect fit. That way it's going to automatically scale that image down. Root and but simple. Right click, copy that QRC URL. Ta-da! Super simple. Let's run this. Click it, and wham! There's our ta-da! You can actually interact with it that way. And then
Anjay, keren juga. What the fuck, kok bisa sih? Oke. uh, uh, um, okay. File recent project key control. Aku ngerti dah masalahnya.
Fish. Save out. That was a mouthful. All right.
Okay. Android. What the fuck is this? Ground control and jadi satu set. Karena ndi? Yo. Udah. Thanks a lot. Fuck! Capeknya. Anjir, oh sih. Main rutin dong. Application window ini bener. Saya mikir. Planet Minds. Bangke. Feel cuy banget. Fucking hell. Capek. Aduh capek. Low. Yeah. Nggak ada logonya bangga. Android version kah? Saya minimum Android itu virusnya. Memang bejir. Tuh. Ketar-ketir. Se. Oh. Aku tak tahu apa yang kamu mau. Deploy. Ayo kan. Bangsat. Kok iso?